Good morning, everybody. For our next session this morning, I'm absolutely delighted to welcome Executive Vice President of the European Commission, Teresa Ribera. Teresa, you need absolutely no introduction, and I know you've got an incredibly busy schedule, so we are so pleased to welcome you and very, very grateful for you taking the time out to join us today. You come with an incredibly interesting mandate that covers environmental issues, competition policy. Really fascinated to hear what you have to say, and I know we're going to have a really great discussion. So shall we dive straight in? And perhaps you can just kick off with just a brief sort of introduction in terms of your experience in the early months of your mandate as EVP.
No, thank you so much, and just to start, thanks a lot for organizing this meeting and having a chance to exchange views with you all, because I think that it is very important having the opportunity to exchange views, to work together, to build alliance is quite an important issue in whatever field, but very much in particular in this field, now that we know that markets are global and that ensuring a well-functioning, level playing field around the globe is so important. I could say that for me it's been a great dive into this world of competition. It's not because it is not clearly one of those very relevant instruments to ensure, as I said, the level playing field, but also to learn and to have a chance to get deeper into how market forces do work right now in such a complicated but passionate world trends. And I think that to me these months have also proven to be quite important in order to identify what are the main challenges to be responded, how we can work to ensure that we can count on a healthy enforcement of competition laws, how we can get into an exercise to update the guidelines that we apply and that bound ourselves when tackling the different competition tools, how we can introduce these competition tools in such a way that are consistent with the way we understand we can help back into the community, the society, because at the end, the whole competition policy was born very much to help the society to be much more healthier, well-functioning, and we've done lots of things. It's been the first 5 months where we came up with this notion of the clean industrial deal, and to what extent this clean industrial deal, in order to improve competitiveness and modernization of the industry in Europe, may relate back to the way we understand how we can assess state aid to cover the eventual market failures in this field, to what extent mergers or antitrust or dominant positions in the market may be read in a different manner, to what extent these new players in the digital world could comply with the digital regulation that provides upfront guidance on what can be done and what cannot be done, so to ensure that innovation has a chance in the digital market. So it's been passionate. I'm happy to be here.
It's fascinating, and actually that point about what is the purpose of for all of us ensuring markets are competitive. We had a discussion in our heads of agency session yesterday about competition to serve society and how do we achieve that. I think it's such an important theme at the moment to make sure it's really relevant for society, the work that we do. But your mandate, as you've just said, it covers the clean, just, competitive transition. It covers competition policy. And perhaps you could just tell us a little bit more about how you see the interactions between those different areas and how you're thinking about that in a sort of joined up way as part of your overall mandate.
No, thank you for the question, and I come back to what I have just said. In fact, as you said, competition was born to provide this comfort to the society and to the economic players and so on, and to be bound by the rule of law that could ensure that there were someone paying attention on how well we perform as a society. But in order to understand how it evolves, having a deep understanding on what are the green forces in the market are very important. I think that for the time being, modernizing the industry, understanding how shareholders may take decisions on where they can bet on the future is very much related on how efficient we are in the use of resources, how promising these clean technologies may be, how it can impact back to consumers with claims that are not real and that can confuse investors or consumers. So there is an approach that was already present in the way antitrust authorities were playing their roles that becomes increasingly important, so to update the way we play with the competition tools in our society. And I think that this is part of what we intend to do. We are trying to identify how the different traditional tools, state aid, mergers, regulations, antitrust regulation, do understand and take into consideration and factor in this type of relevant issues in any given market, in any given society, and at the very same time, to what extent the new approaches in a world that has changed, where, of course, we are an open economy, there may be investors and industrials pretty interested to enter into a given market, such as the European market, but we pay attention to our players, so we need to pay attention to what extent the level playing field rests assured, and this was why we adopted the foreign subsidies regulation to be sure that there was not an uncomfortable and unfair situation for those complying with the regulation in the European markets, or to what extent digital may play a role, but innovation should not be killed, and consumers deserve protection. So how well it could perform according to the existing rules.
It's fascinating, isn't it? Because it captures so many of the different themes that we tend to think about as competition authorities. You know, we think about digital and the development of emerging technologies. We think about that sort of consumer experience and making sure that they are getting the best out of markets as markets are emerging and developing, that level playing field for competitors. All of those things come together really when we're thinking about the green transition in quite a unique way, I guess, and particularly when you're thinking about that on a European basis. It's a fascinating area. And if you sort of talk us through a little bit more in terms of your particular priorities as EVP. We had a really interesting discussion in one of the panel sessions we had yesterday about the interaction between competition policy and industrial strategy, the role of competition in driving economic growth, innovation. We've already talked about that in the context of green transition. But how do you see your priorities more broadly, but also specifically when thinking about those themes as obviously highly topical at the moment in terms of the economic climate for all of us trying to promote economic growth, encourage innovation? What are your priorities in that space?
The official boring answer could be my mission letter states what I need to do and to what extent I have to pay attention together with the team in the DG competition to ensure that a proper evolution of the competition policy takes place. So to accommodate to today's realities of the 21st century. And I think that this is quite important. We do not start from the scratch. I think that much has been done along the years in a very cooperative manner with different national competition authorities, or not only in the European context, but beyond. I think that this can be also built along the lines of the very recent experience. We have gone through, traumatic experiences in terms of how we needed to react to the COVID recovery, how we needed to react to the crisis being provoked by the invasion of Ukraine by Russia and the impact on the energy and then in the economy. And I think that the combination on whether we can bet on the modernization of the industry, how it can impact in a positive way on citizens, consumers, innovation, capacities, retaining talent, and so on, has already been reflected in some of the very first products, outcomes coming from this commission, and some of them are being announced. I think that what I would like to see at the end of the mandate is that we have been able to ensure that a proper evolution on the understanding of the competition tools has taken place. Today, we are launching a process to assess to what extent we can update the guidelines dealing with mergers, to what extent there is a possibility to introduce in the reference that we take into consideration when assessing mergers, horizontal or non-horizontal, a much more broader understanding. What about the security in the value chain? What about innovation? What about the dynamic approach? So to understand that time may play differently, how we can provide a better understanding on sustainability patterns, or how we can take into consideration that there may be an important goal for the business community to bet on sustainability and decarbonization as a means to ensure that things can happen, and that may require a different dimension, a different size, an enlargement of the vision of any given company in any given sector. So I think that this is one of those examples, together with this idea of, yes, of course, we have learned a lot, thanks to the fact that unluckily we had to provide support to our companies or to our citizens in the previous crisis. This may help us to understand to what extent, when we are betting on a much more cleaner industry, we may be providing some guidelines to support decisions on state aid that do not create an unlevel playing field, or make something which is very important in the European Union, which is cohesion, territorial cohesion, so not to allow that those that have a bigger fiscal space get all the credit to bet on industry, and those that do not have so much fiscal space do not have the capacity to retain talent and to retain industry. We have got the first experiences dealing with digital markets, and I would say that it has been quite positive in many different cases, but it is also providing a good basis to keep on learning on how we can ensure a culture of compliance and ensure that these are markets open for those new innovators that want to challenge the incumbents and to count on a capacity to enter in the market. So I think that the whole set of things that show to what extent we are able to update the way we develop practice in competition, together with a large community all over the world that to a certain extent face very similar type of problems, is challenging, is good, but it goes very much in line with what we understand are our values, our principles, and even we can recognize the very much relevant principles of the origin of this antitrust reality.
And I think that resonates so much with so many of the conversations we've been having at the conference over the last 24 hours, you know, that sense that as practitioners, as leaders of our agencies, we need to make sure that the toolkit that we have remains relevant, that it remains capable of addressing the issues that we're seeing here and now, that we can see in those emerging sectors, to ensure that we can keep markets working really well. So it's very, very interesting to hear. And you mentioned the benefit in that context of having an international network where we can have these kind of discussions. But obviously for the European Commission, you're already operating in that international space. You've got the ongoing day-to-day coordination across all of the member states. How do you think about the broader role of international cooperation, whether that's through bilateral activity with other agencies or multilateral fora like the ICN, the OECD? What do you see the role of international cooperation in enabling us to take forward these sorts of priorities together?
I think this is such an important setting. I mean, I'm a true believer of diplomacy of friendship, and I think that changing views on how we can improve the quality of our work is a great thing. Take into consideration what I have already mentioned a couple of times, digital markets. I think it is key. we need international cooperation on digital markets performing well. That does not prevent the fact that there may be some authorities that think that the best way is to intervene in a post-case situation whenever an infringement in the antitrust law has taken place, and there are some others, like in our case, that think that it is easier, cheaper, and much more safer to have an upfront guidance on what we can do or what we cannot do for those that have a big position, a relevant position in the digital markets, and it has proven to be quite effective. I could say that many improvements for the day-to-day life for the operators in the European market or the final consumers at the households have experienced the benefits of this upfront regulation on what to do and what not to do in the Digital Markets Act. But that does not prevent that we appreciate international cooperation, because we know that even if we represent more or less a third of the business for these operators worldwide, they operate in the entire world. So you may be facing similar situations, and it is good to attention on how you face these issues. And it happens in many other circumstances or traditional ways to deal with competition instruments. It may happen with international mergers. It may happen with positions of dominance in a given market. It may happen to understand how we can avoid killer acquisitions. So I think that it is not only important to work at the European level with the national authorities dealing with competition, something that we already do, and that it is quite healthy and thrilling and fantastic. It is also very, very important to have the possibility to work together at the international arena. And according to my own experience in other fields, but also in this field, when we understand each other, even to identify where we agree or where we do not agree, or where there may be difficult challenges that we address in a different way, is so important to have a clear understanding on why we do, how we can expect a given solution or a given statement, decision on whatever, and how we can learn from each other where there may be room for improvement in our own way to proceed. So I think that that international cooperation in this field is fantastic, and I think that this type of settings are quite useful to exchange views and to improve our capacities for the day-to-day practice back home, knowing each other and knowing that we can count on each other whenever we identify a tricky issue that deserves sound solutions, and that may be tackled by some other colleagues somewhere else, and it is better to learn and to understand how, when, and why.
Yeah, and it's very interesting. I've been reflecting as we were preparing to host the annual conference this year on the history of the ICN and the real importance of coming together, as you say, to identify those common issues, those common themes. It doesn't mean that we all go about tackling them in exactly the same way, and it's good to have a healthy debate and discussion about that. But I think that sense of understanding where the issues are and that opportunity to build relationships, as we've been able to do at the conference and through the ICN, is a really important part of how we globally start to tackle some of these issues. I mean, maybe just as a sort of final word for delegates, are there any sort of particular priorities or opportunities you see for international bodies such as the ICN? Any words of advice or encouragement that you would give to our delegates as we continue through to the end of the conference and beyond?
Well, a long time ago I studied law. So I appreciate the rule of law, and I appreciate the principle of cooperation and mutual understanding and mutual respect. And I think that in this field is particularly important. We are in a period where we have evolved from each one on his, her own national reality towards a period where everything seemed to be quite fluent and quite flexible. And now we realize that this meant that we enter into a new phase where we identify new challenges, difficulties, and I think that the right answer to these challenges is to understand each other much better. So to pay attention to this mutual respect and to try to remember the face of those leading this national authority, having a very similar problem. Probably it's good to get the phone and to call and to say, hey, why you are doing that and what it is going on and how we can be increasingly consistent. Not because we are going to do exactly the same, not because the national circumstance of each of us may be the same. That's certainly not the case. We may have different regulation solutions, different social settings or expectations, but it is always good to exchange, and it is always appreciated when you get a message from a colleague to say, hey, I have a problem, or I don't like what you are doing, instead of sending messages out to the crowd, screaming and claiming I don't know what. I think it is better to have a nice conversation to understand what it is going on and to have a capacity to solve or to respond any misunderstandings, but to trust each other.
And it's certainly, I think, for the ICN, that spirit of that shared endeavour, which we I think all have a good sense of, and we've had some great conversations at the heads of agency and other sessions. I think really bringing together that community, and I think that is really what the ICN embodies. So thank you again so much for your time this morning. We're really, really grateful to you, EVP, for joining us, and just a final round of applause, appreciation to EVP Ribera.
So my great pleasure. We wait for your calls, and we may call you. Bye, thank you.